In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to replace your rearward motor mount. Now to remove this engine mount, it's going to be coming out through the lower area of the vehicle. So with that said, you're going to have to safely raise and support the front of the vehicle, generally by the pinch rail along each side of the vehicle so the suspension is hanging. The next thing we're going to do is make our way over to where the transmission is. We're going to apply a little bit of pressure underneath this area. We're not trying to lift anything. We only want to support the transmission. With the transmission supported, let's have a look above the subframe. Right up in this area, you're going to be able to find your rearward mount. Now the first thing we have to do is remove the 17mm through bolt. To access that bolt, I'm going to come through the driver's side wheel well with a 17mm and an extension. Now we can start removing that mounting bolt by turning it counterclockwise. Give your mounting bolt a quick inspection. Make sure it doesn't look rotted and damaged, and then make sure you clean up those threads. Now that that bolt's out, let's continue on down along the bottom of the subframe. There's some hardware down here that we need to start removing. You're going to find 3 14mm headed nuts and 1 14mm headed bolt. There's a nut in each one of these holes. Aside from that, there's one nut here, and then this is your final bolt. Inspect all of your mounting hardware, replace it as necessary. Now that we have it completely unbolted, you should be able to lift it up and down a little bit, but what you're going to find is that it only goes up so far before it starts to bind. So what I'm going to do is carefully use a pry bar in between the subframe and the transmission. I'm going to gently try to pry on this, shifting the engine forward. Once the engine's shifted forward, I should be able to grab that mount and carefully wiggle it up and out of position. With that engine mount broken free, let's continue on by lowering our transmission. Now I'm going to move that support over to the subframe. The next thing that we're going to do is carefully start lowering down our subframe. To do that, you're going to have 4 19mm mounting bolts that hold this to the body. We're only going to loosen these. You don't need to fully remove them. Make sure that's in there a couple threads. Continue on to the forward bolt. Do the same on the other side of the car. Now let's slowly start lowering down the subframe. Now let's follow that exhaust pipe over to where the spring bolts are. We're going to remove each of these 14mm headed spring bolts and then slide the exhaust towards the passenger side. The next thing we want to do is temporarily push the exhaust towards the passenger side. You can tell I used a ratchet strap to hold it in place. Once that's loose, continue on to this area. You're going to find a 10mm headed nut. We'll loosen this up so we can take these cables and move them around as necessary. Give that a wiggle, break it free. Carefully twist this a little bit. Okay friends, now it's time to install our rearward engine mount. Look at the passenger side of the mount. You should have a rubber protective boot on this. We're going to temporarily remove that and we'll reinsert it after we get this back up in towards the vehicle. To install this, let's take it studs first, going into the engine compartment. Maneuver it around as needed until we can put it in proper placement. Now that we have the mount rested in place on the subframe, let's make our way to the forward engine mount. For the forward mount, we're going to want to make sure that we loosen this 17mm headed bolt. You don't have to fully remove it, but to loosen it, we're going to hold the passenger side with a 17mm wrench, and then we'll loosen this bolt. Now that that's loose, you can see that the hole on this part of the mount is actually oblonged, kind of like an egg. Now with that said, we're going to carefully try to raise up the forward aspect of the engine and transmission, essentially pivoting it to the point that we can make our way to the back and get everything lined up perfectly. We're going to continue on with our little rubber heat shield here. You want to make sure that you put this rubber shield on the side that's going to have the exhaust near it. So the passenger side. We'll slide this right over that rubber bushing. It should slide into place. Hand out of the way. There we are. Now it's going to be time for our 17mm through bolt. Now that that's started, we can continue on to our 3 mounting nuts. Once all of them are started, bottom them out. Once you have each of these snug, continue on by torquing them to 38 foot-pounds. Let's lower the front area of the engine. Hold the 17mm nut and tighten your 17mm bolt. Once it's snug, torque it to 64 foot-pounds. Now it's going to be time to resecure the subframe to the body of the vehicle. We'll bottom each of these out and then torque them to 43 foot-pounds. Now it's going to be time to snug up our engine mount through bolt. Torque that through bolt to 64 foot-pounds. Let's resecure our cables. Now it's time to realign the exhaust and reinsert our spring bolts. We'll start in each of these. Once they're both started, go ahead and bottom them out. Once you have them snug, torque them to 32 foot-pounds. Okay friend, we finished installing our rear motor mount. At this point, you want to safely take it for a road test. Make sure you don't hear any funny noises and get yourself down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.